Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Liana Lianov, and I'm the president and founder of the Global Positive Health Institute. And this is the GPHI podcast, where we talk about all things related to healthy lifestyles, positive psychology, how they relate to each other, especially how they affect health and healthcare. And today I'm delighted to have with us our guest, Dr. Meagan Grega. She is the co-founder and chief medical officer of the Kellyn Foundation, and that's an organization dedicated to really integrating lifestyle medicine into the community and all those lifestyle medicine approaches that will really help all of us be healthy and happy. And we're interested in happiness here on this podcast as well. So welcome.
Thank you, Liana. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's dive in. What first grabbed your attention to lifestyle medicine and health behavior change and all of that? And if you can talk about your interest in positive psychology and how that fits in, that would be terrific.
Absolutely. So I was a pretty typical, medical student, resident, doctor type person. I'm a family doc, and I am now board certified in lifestyle medicine, but I was one of the initial class that did that back in 2017, but I've been a doctor for a lot longer than that. So I initially did not know much about lifestyle medicine or health behavior change either. And so I kind of went through the typical get your medical degree, go through residency, start practicing, do all those evidence-based guidelines and do all the things they teach you how to do. And, doing that for high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, all that stuff. And I found that with my patient population, we just weren't making that much progress. I was putting on more medications and patients were getting their second cardiac bypass and the diabetes numbers were not improving. And I got really frustrated because I thought, I had a great education. I've got great colleagues. I have wonderful patients. Why is this not working? And that made me decide to kind of step back and look into the literature and try to find out, are there other places or are there other ways of doing this, of like really supporting health, not just treating disease, but supporting health, wellness, happiness, all that stuff. And I found the blue zones. So that was part of what really got me interested, was like, how is it possible that these blue zones are places in the world that have such little really access to healthcare, except for maybe the Loma Linda one. But, they're not spending anywhere near the amount of money that we are. They don't have all the specialists. They don't have all the pharmaceuticals. And yet the populations are living longer, healthier, more vital lives. They seem happier. They're living independently much longer. And I'm like, well, how is that possible? And then I kept looking into more information, which led me into the lifestyle medicine world of like Dean Ornish and Caldwell Esselstyn, and how they were actually able to reverse heart disease. And a big piece of at least Dean Ornish's program has to do with social connection and stress management. And, he says, love more, stress less. And then I found some of that research that's all about if you are depressed after your heart attack, how that really negatively impacts your prognosis, your morbidity, and your mortality. And so I said, okay, all this has to be connected. And that is kind of what launched me into I'm a total, I love to read things, learn things. Like if I could have had somebody pay me to just like be a student for the rest of my life, I think that's what I would have done instead of being a physician. But so this just sparked my interest, and I've been researching it, reading into it ever since.
I can certainly resonates with me about the piece that connects heart disease and other chronic diseases. Oftentimes those individuals naturally are dealing with depression, and that actually makes their whole situation worse, both physically and mentally and emotionally. And that's actually the early studies that I had been exposed to years ago also got me thinking, just the way you were thinking, like, okay, what can we do about that? And that was long before lifestyle medicine was coined, or even positive psychology was coined. This kind of struggle, like, wait a minute, we can't just like be doing the same things over and over again with these diabetes patients and heart attack patients without making sure that they go out better equipped mentally, emotionally, as well as physically.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so if we want to be effective as healers, we need all these tools in our toolkit. We can't just be saying, okay, here's your beta blocker and here's your statin, and here's your aspirin, good luck. And, try to eat better and try to exercise more and hope that we don't see you again. But unfortunately, we do end up seeing them again. So yes, we need to use all the tools.
Many do. And the lifestyle medicine community is changing that, as you are with your work as one of the leaders in our community. So share with us a little bit about how you use it, both personally and professionally, all these powerful tools.
Well, I would say personally, I hit a wall somewhere in my mid 30s where I just was, we weren't even using the word burnout at that point, but that I just said, this is not the way I want to spend the rest of my life. I love my patients, but I have nothing left to give. You say that the cup is empty, and I needed to take a step back and try to figure out what it was that I wanted to, in a way, be when I grow up, or, like what it was that really I was passionate about. And I think the reason that happened to me was the fact that I wasn't paying attention to all these tools, I wasn't paying attention to my own well-being. I was just, there for my patients and very stressed. We don't have to get into, I think anybody who's a physician knows what it was like back in the, late 90s and early 2000s. And it's, hopefully getting a little bit better, but I was exhausted and I didn't have what my patients needed to help them get better either. So I took a step back and started thinking about what is it that I'm passionate about? What are my strengths? What are the things that I really, would do even if I didn't get paid to do them? And that's how I started to create what is now Kellyn Foundation. And now I'm also teaching medical students and residents about lifestyle medicine, and a whole bunch of positive things happened. But what had to happen first was me to step back and say, I'm exhausted. I'm not happy. I am stressed out all the time. I'm not sleeping well. I'm not paying attention to my own nutrition or the things that my own social relationships, my children were a lot younger at that point. And you need all of that as fuel to be able to do the other things that you want to do for the world and for other people. And if you use up your whole energy level, or like your whole fuel tank, if you use up all your passion, and it's not even passion, you're just like using up all the energy that you have to do these things that are not feeding your soul or not helping you with your well-being, you're eventually going to crash, or else you're just going to do that like presenteeism sort of thing, or don't they call it quiet quitting now, where you're there, but you're not really there sort of. And so personally, I started exercising again. I love to exercise, and it was something that I had, or I should say physical activity. I don't go to the gym necessarily, but I do a lot of moving around, walks with the dogs, lots of outside time in nature. I spent a lot more time with my family, which I have been able to continue as my schedule has gotten busier. I've made sure that is still something that we really focus on. I learned that even though I had spent the majority of my young adult life not sleeping very much, that I need to sleep not all the time, like as doctors, there's times that we can't, but then you have to prioritize it other times. And I really started to kind of take my own internal barometer of, are you happy with the way things are going? And if you're not, then what are you going to do to change it, instead of just putting your head down and trying to like get through the wall, which I think is not very helpful. So my biggest things that I still feel are useful for me from a positive psychology or standpoint is, play to your strengths. What are the things that you love, that you feel like you have mastery of, or that you are passionate about, or give your life meaning or purpose? And then make sure that you are nurturing that kind of like wellspring of creativity and strength, which is, you got to get enough sleep, you got to eat well. Your people in your life are really important to you. You have to have ways of dealing with your stress. I always say to the residents, make sure every week there is something that you are doing that you want to do, not just that you have to do. And that is just as important as studying for your boards or, like doing your electronic medical records. And that's what I try to walk that talk now that I've learned how much better I feel, and also how much more productive I am.
Yeah, great story. And you just outlined those all important pillars of a total healthy lifestyle, and that we use as the main treatment tools in lifestyle medicine. And that not only prevents disease, not only treats disease, but sometimes can even, reverse, or at least go really take us back to earlier times when our body was was healthier before the onslaught of all that stress and all those poor habits. And
It's funny that you say that, Liana, because my dad, who is he's in his late 70s now, but when I stopped working at that job in my mid 30s and began like kind of this journey, he says that he watched me age backwards. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I didn't have any like specific chronic diseases yet, though I think I was probably, heading in that direction based on my family history and some of the choices I was making. But to think of that you could actually in a way age backwards, it's not that we're looking for the fountain of youth per se, but that having that kind of like that glow, that energy, that the ability to vitality I thought that was an interesting thing. And I think a lot of people will see that in themselves if they use the tools like you're talking about.
yeah, the feeling of vitality emotionally and physically is all important. And really the only way to get there is through these tools. And so, yeah, building them in. And well, from what we know from positive psychology science and behavior science is that actually you can start to feel better right away. And who doesn't want to feel better? So that hopefully when we make it realistic, despite having busy lives, that we can and want to go back to doing those kinds of activities over and over again in our lives. Go out for a nice walk in nature, all the things that bring us the joy that we hopefully couldn't relive in our adulthood that we certainly had, most of us, in our childhood.
Yeah. And one of the things I often talk with patients or my family, myself about sometimes when I need to, my residents, is like, even if you don't have time to go out for a walk, you see my background, which is actually the creek where my family and I often go for walks. So even when I'm on a Zoom meeting, I'm reminding myself, like, you need to go out and make sure that you're getting some time. But the thing that you can do, even if you have almost no time, is something with gratitude. So whether it's a gratitude journal or a gratitude jar, you put things in that you're happy about and or that you feel grateful for. And when you're stressed, you take them out and look at them. Or one of the things I try to do every night is right before I fall asleep, think of 3 things that happened that day that I'm grateful for, that I'm really happy. And sometimes it's just, like, it doesn't have to be big things. Sometimes it's just like, I didn't have to go to the store. There was food for dinner because we batch cooked earlier in the week, just things like that. Or it might be something huge, like, you're going to have a big family gathering or something this weekend. But it's just reminding yourself, focusing on the positive things that happen during the day. Because I think as humans, and you know this way better than I do, but I think as humans, we're kind of hardwired to really pay attention to the negative. And so that's what we're like thinking about as we're trying to fall asleep. And if you make a habit of reminding yourself of the good stuff that you have, sometimes for me, it's just that my adult children have chosen to live nearby, and so even though I might not have seen them that day, but I know that I'll be able to see them sometime in the next couple of days. And that's enough to just reset. And I think that those are things that they don't take a lot of time, but if they become a habit, they make you feel better.
Yeah, that paying attention to the good things is so important. And as you said, we are hardwired to problem solve, to be aware of what's not going right, and to be like figuring out how to fix it. And sometimes that kind of thought process is productive, and it helps us fix problems. Sometimes that thought process can cause stress because maybe there are just some things that aren't very fixable, and we can really spin and ruminate in a negative way. And so it's nice to be able to actually counter that with spinning and ruminating, if you will, savoring on some good things in our lives. But that means that just stopping and reframing and making that new attention habit.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely. Well said. So we have a number of health professionals who are listening. What tips do you have for them about how they can really help their patients take on a healthy lifestyle, a happy lifestyle, and these kinds of positive activities?
Well, I think in a lot of, excuse me, in a lot of ways, it's the taking small bites out of the apple in a way. Like you don't want to hit somebody with sometimes people feel like, oh, I have to go to a retreat or something to feel better or to focus on this. And it's not that. It's figuring out a few places in your life where you can remind yourself of these happy things, or also, like I said earlier, play to your strengths. So for patients, to help them, either you help them, or there's tools that are out there, there's surveys that can help people figure out their strengths, and then asking people to think about the things that that they're curious about, that they're passionate about, things that they really would like to know more about or have meaning or purpose for them. And then how do they use the strengths that they have to get to that point? And I sometimes say, like, I have a lot of strengths. I'm very, very blessed. I'm grateful for it. But one of the things I really dislike doing is spending a lot of time on the computer. Like, that's something I really dislike doing. I have a cousin who that's like something he loves. Like, he can totally get into flow by being, because he's a programmer, and he can spend hours and not even know that time goes by. So if we're looking at projects that would be meaningful and helpful and bring us joy, his projects are going to be very different than what my projects are. And so just having a little bit of a cataloging of what are your strengths, what do you love to do, what are you curious about, what are you passionate about, and then trying to get towards, another big one is autonomy, like being able to choose what you would like to do. So it's something you want to do, not just something that you have to do. And then working towards mastery, like getting better at it. That's the sort of stuff that makes us all happy and excited. And so you have to take that in a small chunk with a kind of motivational interviewing or shared decision making, and say to people, hey, what's going on in your life? What sort of things can we think about that would help you get some of that positive, like dopamine and oxytocin and good stuff going in your brain that'll make you feel better? Volunteering is great for a lot of people. Doing something to help somebody else, whether it's in your family or your friend group, or, that really gives a lot of us a boost. I try to just remind people to think, to sincerely compliment, not just like make up, compliments, but to sincerely compliment the people that are close to them. Not every day, but, like on a somewhat regular basis, so that you're letting them know how much you appreciate them. And there's going to be a lot of good, like, stuff that flows back to you the way you feel from that, but then it also strengthens your relationships, and it's like a whole virtuous circle. So one thing I do often have patients watch is Robert Waldinger's TEDx talk about, what makes a happy life, because we all spend so much time thinking about things like, how much money do we have? And, what's my blood pressure? And, where am I going to go on vacation? And like all this like stressful kind of achievement oriented stuff. And that TED Talk is a great way to recenter and go, you know what, the stuff that really is going to matter as I age, and, even it's going to matter right now, is what is the strength of my relationships. And so therefore I should be putting energy and attention into that, not just into making money, getting credentials, buying a new car, all that sort of stuff. So those are some of the practical things that I do with patients and with students, because I feel like this is stuff we should be teaching younger people. It took me into my 30s before I learned any of this stuff, and now I'm in my 50s. It would be great if younger people could be learning this like as a coping mechanism or strategy when they're in elementary school, and definitely as they're going farther. So I think what you do with all of the outreach is critical, because I don't think people knew this, like back in, I know now it's the last century, like back in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, like we weren't hearing about this. And I think it needs to shift so that it's part of the social conversation.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for mentioning the Waldinger TEDx talk. It's called the Good Life. He does various webinars, and it's one of a number of really powerful that work is based on a powerful study, scientific study, cohort study over many years, that was able to sort out a lot of different variables that contribute to our health and well-being, and be able to say, because of the strength of that study, say how much that social connection piece rises to the very top for our, not only our happiness, but also that for our physical health and longevity, which again, like you were saying, people aren't quite piecing that together. And even many of our health professionals aren't piecing together, and they think, I'm focusing on, treating. So here's the medications, here's, checking the labs, et cetera. And that's where my focus should be. And the other stuff is nice. It's nice that we're all happier, but maybe isn't quite directly relevant to what I do. And at the GPHI, we say, oh no, it's so directly relevant. And if you're having a conversation with your patients about their social connection, and maybe that's all you do because that's all you have time for a particular patient because of where they are in their lives, then you're giving them the best medicine, is to help them figure out how to get that social support they need.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So what are some other resources that you might recommend folks on this whole topic of health and well-being and lifestyle medicine, positive psychology?
Interesting. So, like I said, we often do the Robert Waldinger TED Talk, and now he's got a book out, which I have on my nightstand to be my to be read sort of thing. I would say that I'm actually reading a different book right now. It's called The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler, and that's an interesting kind of like. I'm not saying it's the right thing for everybody. We don't have to do impossible things, but it's the thinking about how do you get the components of your life stacked up so that you are more frequently in that flow state where you do feel like you're living out your purpose, you're, in the moment, you're enjoying everything that is happening. But I think in the end, the most important thing that we say to patients and to ourselves is paying attention to how your well-being is one of the most critical things that you can do for your life. It's not selfish. It's not like, oh, I'll do that when I have time, because like you will never have time. It's making it a part in the same way that you like make sure that you have toothpaste to brush your teeth. Like you need to have that be a focus. And it's not selfish, so don't ignore it because it's going to have a huge impact. And having that discussion with patients, I think, is the key. And then you can say, hey, here's some websites, or here's some books, or here's some podcasts. And you probably have like a great list that you could give me, so I could like have more of them out there. But it's also the accountability in a way that then when you see the patient again, you ask them, so how's it going with, you said you were going to start volunteering at the local pet shelter, and, like, how's that going? Because if patients know that you are going to follow up on it, they're more likely to, follow through on it. And the same way when you're asking about physical activity or what they're eating, like it should be something that we as physicians or as other healthcare practitioners, that we're trying to walk the talk ourselves, but we're also showing people how important we think it is by spending time on it. We spend so much time on what their medications are and what their labs say, and that's important too. But if we show them that, no, we think this is important and we're going to ask them about it, I think that's going to make a difference in the way people prioritize it in their life.
Yeah, exactly. I use those very words time and again, is that as health professionals, we can really focus for our patients the importance of these kinds of activities and thought patterns that are just as important in their overall treatment as what's traditionally thought of as good medicine. And if the doctor or the primary health provider thinks it's important enough to ask over and over again, the patients will get that message. Oh, this really is important, so I'm gonna make it a big part of my life and prioritize it. Yeah, so thank you for that. So as we wrap up, is there any one single advice that you want people to walk away with, or any real important parting words for our listeners?
Well, I think I would remind everybody, we've said it a few times this during this discussion, but that how important it is to make some time for the things that you want to do, not just the things that you have to do. And one of the ways that you can trigger yourself for that is to write it down on a Post-it note or an index card or a piece of paper, or take a picture or something, and either stick it on your fridge or stick it on your mirror, like that you get ready every morning, like just remind yourself so that it's always kind of getting top of mind again. And maybe it's even just something like, what am I grateful for today? Or some sort of little thing to trigger yourself, because we're all really, really busy and we're distracted and we've got a lot of stuff going on. So one of the best ways to bring this back front and center is to put it in a place that you see all the time, and then try to convince other people around you, your spouse, your children, your coworkers, whatever, to have times where like you're doing this with each other. You've got sticky notes, they've got sticky notes, but it's something that you're doing as part of the conversation of your culture and the social norms around you. And that's just going to make not only you happier, but everybody else as well.
Thank you. I love the sticky note suggestion. I used to be, not so much anymore, but maybe I will be now that we're talking about it. It'd be, at work used to be called the sticky note queen, and I'd have them on my computer screen, but also at home, on the mirror in the bathroom, and yeah, it works. So it's a little old fashioned, but maybe it's good because it gets us out of also the electronics, and it's
Mhm.
something that we hardwire into our brains by actually writing it physically as
Yeah.
well. So yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast, Dr. Meagan Grega. And thank you to our listeners to this GPHI podcast. I hope you'll join us again at a future podcast. In the meantime, be happy, healthy, and safe, and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.